Hello, this is Tracy Insminger. Today we will be evaluating formal and informal, culturally responsive and accessible assessments. Assessments and evaluations explained. Assessments are a related series of measurements used to determine a complex attribute of an individual or a group of individuals. It involves gathering and interpreting about student level of attainment and learning goals. Assessments imply that there will be some improvement. Assessments can identify students' strengths and weakness. Teachers can use the information to guide their teaching or curriculum, to give students support or enrichment where they may need it most. Assessment measures over time, motivates. There are four basic components to assessments. Assessments measure improvement over time, motivate students to study, evaluate teaching methods, rank student abilities in relation to the whole group. Now let's look at evaluation. Evaluation measures or observes the process to judge or determine the value by comparing it to others or some kind of standard process. Evaluations imply a critique of effectiveness and is used as a tool for learning. Evaluation has five basic components: identifying and collecting relevant information, articulating the purpose of the educational system, having ideas that are valuable and useful to learners in their lives and professions, analyzing and interpreting information for learners, and classroom management for classroom decision making. Establishing coordination and coherence with assessment and evaluations. Coherence is the word for being consistent, logical, unified. Similarly, cohesion is the word for continuity, unified together. How do evaluations and assessments work together to support learning? Both assessments and evaluations specify criteria to observe in a performance or outcome, according to Baer. Both processes provide a benchmark for establishing learning and critiquing effectiveness of resources such as curriculum and teaching. Assessments are used to guide teaching and learning, according to Fisher. It provides useful feedback to both instructors and about the extent to which students are successfully meeting course learning objectives. Evaluations judge student learning and understanding of the material for the purposes of grading and reporting. Both can be used to affect the quality of student performance, whether it is the present or future. Both processes result in data. Referring back to the key components of assessment and evaluations, both processes can be used by teachers to assess their effectiveness. Recall that assessments can be used to evaluate teaching methods, and evaluations can be used for classroom management or classroom decision making. Teaching methods and classroom decision making are both used to best support students through finding new strategies or deciding whether or not students in the class need more differentiation, or kinesthetic learning versus auditory. Oftentimes, assessments are summative, so the data cannot be used on that class, but the teacher can see the data and determine if a standard needs to have more time spent on it, especially if the previous year's data shows the same level of learning on that standard. With formal assessments, according to Aquino, Kaluuya, Yambi, students are aware that the task that they are doing is for assessment purposes. An example would be state assessments. State assessments tend to be more reliable and valid. They are aligned to state standards. Therefore, they are criterion referenced and norm referenced, which is testing that compares normal skill levels to those of individual students of the same age. The degree to which test scores are unaffected by measurement errors is an indication of the reliability of the test. Formal assessments are generally summative, can also be called final assessments, but both mean they happen at the end of the school year. Informal assessments tend to focus on student learning, and teachers decide what to assess. They are continual in nature, also known as intermittent, and are formative. They may not be graded. Typically, they are not graded. Students may be unaware that they are even being done. According to Edutopia, informal assessments evaluates progress. It shows how a student is doing and what changes to a lesson may need to be done by the teacher. Informal assessments may be graded on teachers' expectations, that's the downside, rather than on student progress. There is little to compare progress to, and students may be unmotivated since they are not graded. Examples of informal assessments are running records, reflection papers, and even student assessments. Those are some of the biases or the downsides to informal assessments. Also, informal assessments can be done during group projects where other students are contributing to the overall product. So it can be combined with other learning tasks, which can be a positive or a negative. It can be analyzing text passages on different topics where the judgment is being made on the ability to analyze, but the learner may have more prior knowledge on a certain reading text, so that may affect the outcome. So now that we've established all of those different areas of evaluation, assessment, and what they mean, we will now take a look at how school leaders are responsible for the mindset toward education, whether or not assessments show equity, and assessments that support academic and non-academic social emotional support. The necessary roles for leaders in education. Leaders in education can impact learning, as stated by Leithwood, by setting directions, charting a clear course that everyone understands, establishing high expectations, and using data to track progress and performance. Data can be used to improve teaching and student learning. Effective leaders use their role to inspire staff to work toward the common goal by providing individual support, such as professional development, collaboration, and providing models of best practice and beliefs that are the foundation of the school and district. With the changes in diversity in student populations, leaders need to engage with other agencies able to provide support for students and their families. Principals need to ensure all students have access to education that is high quality and equitable. Equity in education should be a top priority of school leaders. Principals can support this endeavor by providing professional development, according to Leithwood, Lewis, Anderson, and Wallstrom. Among school factors, the teacher is the most influential on student achievement, and the principal is second most influential factor. Leithwood, Seashore, Anderson, and Wallstrom. Education must support all learners through equitable lessons and assessments. According to Kyle, one powerful means of bringing students' culture into the classroom through equitable lessons and assessments. One powerful means of bringing students' culture into the classroom is through culturally relevant performance assessments. Equitable assessments will center a student's identity and experiences by asking them to show what they know and can do through multidisciplinary projects. Students have the chance to critically reflect on their learning and share their personal stories. Some states have established learning committees to help guide culturally relevant assessments that are performance-based and serve student populations that are diverse. Culturally responsive teaching brings a positive light to cultural differences and validates students' experiences as knowledgeable. Every student should be able to articulate what they know in context of their culture. Teachers that develop a pedagogy that is student-centered and supports students' cultural differences in learning and are used to support that students' learning through integrating their cultural knowledge and apply it to current learning. Implementing culturally responsive teaching may include working to use educational funds for curriculum that support multicultural learning, providing staff development, or collaborating collaboration time to support teachers in becoming culturally responsive and addressing any cultural biases they may have. And now we will talk about the social and emotional part of support in education. Now that we've clarified some of the different types of assessment and the different approaches to pedagogy. According to Schleicher, schools are not just places where students acquire academic skills. They also help students become more resilient in the face of adversity. How students experience school will impact the rest of their lives. Teachers that are able to genuinely connect with their students, show support and give a sense of belonging, and are able to help students regulate their emotions. A teacher's role in education is to support student well-being. They can talk about how or address how students are developing mentally and physically. Students can be intrinsically motivated when their well-being is addressed, but teachers' role in that is to help students to build a relationship with their students and give them support, genuinely care about who that child is, be involved in their life, support them in their learning, be there if they have extra needs. Some examples would be to maybe come in earlier and help that student study, or allow the student to come in during their lunchtime, mutual lunchtime, and work with them then. A school's role in the student well-being. Students can be intrinsically motivated when their well-being is being addressed. So students with good well-being will have less school-related disciplinary problems, and students have a responsibility to make sure that they are addressing social emotional concerns of the students, and most states have addressed that standard now in Common Core. Assessments that measure the success of SEL. For SEL to be effective, there needs to be a way to measure the outcomes of the lessons. Many Kansas schools use the Kansas Communities That Care, the KCTC assessment. The KCTC is a non-academic assessment survey that asks students questions on how they see the school climate, how they feel about their relationships with their teacher, how they feel about themselves, bullying, home life, drug use, and exposure. The results are available on the KCTC site after the surveys are completed. Students are assessed in 6th, 8th, 10th, and 12th grades. KCTC does provide coherence and cohesions with assessments because it can be used to establish feelings from aggregate groups that may affect assessment outcomes. KCTC can also support digital literacy by assessing any digital bullying that may be happening that students may prefer to remain anonymous about. Finally, implementation of strategies for academic and non-academic strategies for learning. In areas where we particularly maybe are not stronger in for improving academic learning for our school, the following will be implemented. The school will be reviewing our current curriculum to determine whether or not it addresses culturally responsive teaching, as well as establishing dates on the school calendar, professional development, in culturally responsive teaching and possible bias, as well as staff collaboration days. It's important that we work together, share ideas, talk about things that have and have not worked amongst each other to support each other and guide each other. We will also be implementing assessments that are culturally relevant. So we will be collaborating also during that time with each other to exchange ideas. Assessing in a student's native language and or allowing that student to demonstrate their knowledge in context of their culture. And that may involve talking with the students and even with family members of those students to determine what sort of assessments would be culturally supportive. And of course, finally, community engagement. Our district will create a community engagement team to reach out and bring the school and community together for the betterment of our stakeholders. It is important that we support all learners, and in order to do that, we need to get to know their families, their histories, and help them feel part of our school culture.